some remarks or tribute that he wants to make and that we certainly want to associate ourselves with.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I'd like to just take a few moments to recognize that the Rules Committee tragically lost a beloved member of our family last week. Our former Democratic Staff Director, Dan Turton, passed away on January 9th at the age of 56 from complications due to type 1 diabetes, a hereditary condition he'd lived with for over 30 years. Dan lived an amazing and interesting life, and I will insert his obituary into the record for all to see what a truly wonderful person he was. He was a great man, but more importantly, he was a very, very good man who was taken from us much, much too soon. On behalf of the whole congressional community, I want to offer condolences to his wife, Bree, their children, Shaw, Lane, Mason Grace, Smith, and Beck, his parents, Thomas and Catherine, his brothers, John, Greg, and Josh, and his whole extended family. You know, one thing people might not know from watching the Rules Committee on TV is that we are all part of that extended family. For those who don't work here, it might seem like Democrats and Republicans come into this room, debate for a few hours, and then leave. And while that's what makes it onto C-SPAN, the truth is that none of it would be possible without the work of our relentlessly dedicated staff on both sides of the aisle, who work tirelessly day in and day out to pull it all off. We really are there for one another, and Dan was always there for all of us. He and I were staffers together on the Hill. He started off as an intern for Dick Gephardt, right when my old boss, Joe Moakley, took over as the chairman of this committee. And if you ask people about Dan, the same words keep coming up over and over again: loyal, thoughtful, mentor. You know, one of the things that stands out to me the most is how respected Dan was on both sides of the aisle. He earned his reputation the old-fashioned way, by sticking to his word, by caring about the people around him, and putting in the hard work and effort that it takes to get things done around here. Dan knew that public service is more than just a job. He was called to help people, and that's what he did, mentoring staffers, taking people under his wing, teaching them the right values, and showing them how to do things the right way. He led by example, and that's why one of the other things you'll hear is that Dan was one of the most effective staffers out there. His record speaks for itself. Speakers and committee chairs, presidents and party leaders all relied on Dan for his insight and guidance. In fact, he played a key role in helping President Obama convince members of Congress to pass the Affordable Care Act, which now makes health care possible for over 20 million Americans. Dan believed in this institution and in the work we do. He was optimistic about this place and about our ability to solve problems. He believed in and dedicated his life to the idea of service, and in the process of fighting for what he believed in, he made life better for countless people he never knew and made this country a better place. Dan's life will be honored tomorrow from 2 to 3 p.m. at Union Station's East Hall. May his memory be a blessing and give us the strength and courage to keep working for the values he believed in and fought for during his time with us. And I thank Mr. Chairman for giving me the time, and I yield back.
Well, I want to begin by again associating myself with my good friend's remarks. All of us that knew Dan knew he was a mentor on both sides of the aisle. He was a role model. He represented the very best traditions this committee has. A lot of tragedy in his life. It never slowed him down. It never stopped him. It never changed the person that he was. And we grieve with our friends in the minority that such a talented public servant was lost to us all, and we offer our prayers and our thoughts toward his family as well. He's one of the people that made this place a really special place. So we share our friends' grief, and we didn't just lose a great Democratic staffer, we lost a great American and a fine institutionalist in every sense of the word. With that sad beginning, good afternoon. Before I proceed with my statement, I want to announce that the Rules Committee will not be taking up testimony today on 2 reports to accompany resolutions recommending the House hold Hunter Biden in contempt of Congress. I understand that conversations between Mr. Biden's attorneys and the Oversight and Judiciary Committees are ongoing, and we will not meet tonight on this matter, while discussions about this compliance remain open. However, should those conversations not prove successful, The Rules Committee may reconvene this week to consider those reports. We will provide notice and inform members of the need for any additional meeting on this matter should it become necessary. The Declaration of Independence prescribes many of America's noblest ideals. It reminds us that individuals are, quote, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, unquote. Among these is life. Tens of thousands of Americans were upholding that very philosophy as they converge on Washington, D.C. this week for the 51st Annual March for Life. Standing together, people of all backgrounds will celebrate and defend our most precious gift, life. We continue to recognize the Supreme Court rightfully returned the power of protecting the unborn to the people. Yet we must never be complacent in our moral duty to stand up for the sanctity of life. Today, we'll take up two measures supporting that very notion. First of all, we'll consider H.R. 6914, the Pregnant Students' Rights Act. The goal of any college is to educate, support, and empower the students as they chart their path forward. Each pupil has a distinct journey, and I think we can all agree that resources and guidance offered on campus should reflect that. This bill ensures that pregnant students are well informed about their rights and the support they can access. When making consequential choices about their future, those expecting should know all the options and tools available to them. They should not be discriminated against or marginalized to believe that they don't have life-affirming alternatives. H.R. 6914 requires colleges and universities to guarantee pregnant women are forthrightly aware of their rights, educational accommodations, and protections under the law, so women can balance college and pregnancy. Furthering the goal of maternal assistance, we'll also discuss H.R. 6918, the Supporting Pregnant and Parenting Women and Families Act. The Biden administration has proposed a new discriminatory regulation impacting expectant mothers in need and would specifically ban pregnancy centers from receiving federal dollars through the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, or TANF program. The White House is stripping resources from facilities that provide women and families with medical services, emotional support, and supplies like diapers and prenatal vitamins. The result is American women having diminished options for care and fewer alternatives to abortion. H.R. 6918 will prevent the defunding of these critical health centers. It's a direct step in safeguarding access to care and support needed as parents ready to bring a new child into the world. Finally, I'll turn to House Resolution 957. Our southern border has plunged into unprecedented chaos under President Biden. His administration has lost operational control and unleashed a full-blown humanitarian and security crisis. These lax policies have incentivized an historic number of illegal crossings, and the ramifications are much more than the sheer numbers or an overwhelmed border patrol. Just last week, New York City elementary students lost access to their school facility to house migrants. This is only the latest example of many negative consequences faced by communities across the nation. In fact, the only people helped by this situation are drug smugglers, human traffickers, and terrorists. The failure of the Biden administration to address these serious blunders is long overdue. House Resolution 957 calls upon President Biden and his administration to end their disastrous open borders policy that have turned every state into a border state. I'll now yield to our ranking member, my good friend, Mr. McGovern, for any remarks he wishes to make.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And unfortunately, we're once again wasting more time this week on extreme MAGA culture wars. First, we have two bills that are part of Republicans' ongoing push to ban abortion nationwide. It's absurd. I mean, every single week we're here with bills to criminalize abortion, ban abortion, punish people who get an abortion, and push these extreme bills that take away women's freedoms. H.R. 6914 makes it harder for students to receive complete and accurate information on their rights and options regarding abortion. It omits any requirements for schools to distribute medically accurate and comprehensive information regarding pregnancy, including information on abortion services. rather than providing support to students like ensuring that they have better family-friendly campus housing, accessible and affordable childcare, flexible attendance policies, and lactation accommodations, H.R. 6914 accomplishes only one goal: stigmatizing students who seek abortion care. We also have H.R. 6918, the Supporting Pregnant and Parenting Women and Families Act, a deeply misguided name for a bill that does no such thing. We hear from Republicans about how pro-life they are. I mean, give me a break. These bills aren't about life, because if they were, Republicans would be advancing policies that actually support life. We could be addressing the growing child care crisis, expanding access to paid family and medical leave, or tackling childhood poverty, or trying to end hunger that exists in this country amongst millions and millions of children. I think our former colleague Barney Frank from Massachusetts, I think, put it accurately when he said that Republicans seem to believe that life begins at conception but ends at birth. Instead, it seems the Republican position is that, as I said, he was absolutely right, because H.R. 6918 continues to divert federal dollars intended for poor families to dangerous anti-abortion centers that put women's health at risk. To be clear, these anti-abortion centers deceive people seeking access to abortion care. They are not regulated and are frequently non-medical, meaning they can severely jeopardize the health of women who go to them. And again, it's no secret that the House Republicans are working towards a national abortion ban. The NRCC chair recently said it himself. Voters believe the Republican position is, quote, "will throw you in jail if you get an abortion," end quote. And let me tell you, the voters are right. That's what Republicans want to do. Don't take my word. It's already happening. Across the country, from Texas to Kentucky to South Carolina, Republicans are advancing legislation that seeks to criminalize abortion care. We're also here today to consider another extreme MAGA messaging bill on the border. This is a do-nothing press release in the form of a non-binding resolution. It's all about turning the House of Representatives into an arm of the Trump campaign. That's it. And no matter how many times MAGA Republicans scream and shout, the border is not open. House Democrats had been ready from day one of this Congress to work across the aisle and develop a thoughtful, bipartisan solution to fix issues at the border. But Republicans don't want that. They don't want to solve any of the border security problems, because if something were to get done, Republicans would no longer be able to campaign on it. And in fact, Speaker Johnson literally gave away the game over the weekend. He told Republicans he doesn't want an immigration or border deal with Democrats, because then they all can't demagogue the issue. It's pathetic. This is all about creating a distraction from Republican disarray. Each measure we are considering today wastes time as we barrel toward a government shutdown, and this Republican majority is still in chaos. They had a fifth rule go down last week because of the turmoil in their own conference. They continue to bring us to the brink of a government shutdown, despite the fact they've had months and months to work on appropriations, and they have no vision or plan to fight for the American people, who expect a heck of a lot more from us than these awful, awful bills. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Without objection, any prepared statements that our witnesses may have will be included in the record. I'd like to welcome our first panel, two of our very good friends, Chairwoman Virginia Foxx and Ranking Member Bobby Scott from the Committee on Education and Workforce. Chairman Foxx, I welcome your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank the members for being here, and I thank the ranking member for that tribute to Dan and for calling attention to the impact that diabetes has in this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for being here. H.R. 6914, the Pregnant Students' Rights Act, offers a conduit through which pregnant women who are students can receive both guidance and assistance during a deeply personal and sensitive time in their lives. This legislation would ensure that universities offer the appropriate breadth of resources and information so pregnant students can carry a baby to term while continuing their education. This includes allowing female students to change a class schedule to attend doctor visits. What's more, this legislation will properly inform pregnant students of their recourse to file a Title IX complaint with the Department of Education. Mr. Chairman, the core of this legislation is about ensuring unfettered and convenient access to information. H.R. 6914 requires information to be mailed regularly to students and appear in student handbooks at each orientation, at student health or counseling centers, and on the institution's website. Caring for an unborn child while pursuing rigorous post-secondary coursework is certainly not an easy lift. It's a reality that many face without the tools that this legislation would ensure. I urge the committee to support H.R. 6914, and I yield back.
Ranking Member Scott, you're now recognized for your opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Cole, Ranking Member McGovern, and thank you for entering into the record Dan Turton's obituary. It outlines a very inspiring and remarkable life. So thank you very much. Members of the Rules Committee, this evening I'm speaking in opposition to H.R. 6914, so-called Pregnant Students' Rights Act. On its face, the bill may appear to ensure pregnant students are informed of resources available to them and how they can continue to access their education while pregnant. The impact, regrettably, is much more sinister. It attempts to dissuade students from considering their full reproductive options and makes it even more difficult for them to get full and accurate information about their rights, including rights that are already protected under Title IX of the Education Amendments under 1972. And let me repeat, everything in the bill is already protected under Title IX, as the bill provides information about some of those rights under Title IX, including how to file a complaint with the Department of Education. However, the information in the bill is only partial in that it leaves many pregnant students, like those who are facing pregnancy loss or those who are choosing to terminate their pregnancy, in the dark about their rights under federal civil rights law. So it does not provide students with a description of all of their rights, just some of their rights, selective rights. Students already face numerous challenges on campus, including mental health problems, financial and food insecurity, academic difficulties, to name a few. Regrettably, this bill would make life even more challenging for students by omitting the comprehensive sexual and reproductive health information they actually need. For example, the bill fails to require schools to inform students about contraception, which would help students avoid unplanned pregnancies, their rights and resources if they experience a miscarriage, and vital resources if they need to terminate a pregnancy due to health-related emergencies. Additionally, if a student decides to carry a child to term, this bill would not even provide any additional funding, such as child care, nutrition, affordable housing options, or other critical support, so the bill provides partial information but no help. That's why dozens of health and reproductive rights organizations, such as the National Women's Law Center, the National Partnership of Women and Families, and the American Civil Liberties Union, have stated that H.R. 6914, quote, falls far short of the protections that are actually necessary for pregnant and parenting students and their children. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, women should be able to control their own bodies and futures, but by keeping students in the dark about their health care choices, resources, and rights available to them, H.R. 6914 would deprive pregnant students of their right to decide what is best for them and their families, while offering no services. In a post-Roe world where women face state-sanctioned abortion bans and complicated legal situations and challenges to access health care, we should be working to inform women and students of all of their reproductive rights and protections. This bill just does the opposite, so I oppose the legislation and urge my colleagues to do the same. Look forward to your questions and yield back.
I thank our witnesses for their testimony. The chair will forego any opening questions and now turn to the distinguished vice chairman of the committee, Dr. Burgess, for any questions you might have for our panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just before I get to questions, I just have to say the problem at the border is not an immigration problem. It is a security problem. And this country needs to wake up and recognize that and deal with it as such. All of the happy talk about immigration reform is not going to solve the problem that exists today in Texas, then by proxy in other states around the country. Now, the bill in front of us today, Dr. Foxx, I appreciate your eloquent summary. You describe it as a conduit for guidance and assistance, and I think that's exactly right. I'm at a loss to explain the statement of administration policy that opposes this. I can't see why why the president would be opposed to a conduit for guidance and assistance. It's, I'll have to leave it to them to explain why the veto threat exists. But I appreciate you all doing the work on this. I appreciate the work that you did in taking testimony and arriving at the conclusion, writing legislation, and look forward to voting for it on the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Thank you. I now turn to my very good friend, the ranking member, for any questions he might have for the panel.
Well, I'll ask unanimous consent to insert on the record the statement of administration policy.
Without objection.
And, I mean, there's nothing really to say here. I mean, this is another in a series of really bad bills that I think really is offensive to women, and so I will speak about this on the floor tomorrow. I yield back.
Thank you very much. And now go to my good friend from Pennsylvania for any questions he might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I just want to thank both witnesses for coming in and providing testimony, and with that, I yield back.
Thank you very much. And now go to my other very good friend from Pennsylvania. Gentlelady is recognized for any questions she may have for the panel.
Thank you. I appreciate the list of measures which would actually help promote the health and well-being of student parents, which the ranking member, Mr. Scott, listed. I would add to that, information if you have a child born with a disability on what kinds of services and supports might be necessary, because that obviously also comes into play here when we're talking about students having children. But I too am very concerned by the fact that this is a very clumsy attempt to put a fist on the scale with respect to promoting the anti-abortion agenda, and one only has to look at the finding sections of this bill, which repeats a litany of anti-abortion allegations unsupported by facts. And so for that reason, I will be opposing this bill as well. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Now I recognize a very, very good friend from Minnesota for any questions she may have for our panel.
Well, Mr. Chair, you have a lot of good friends, so go ahead for you.
I try to.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you, Chairwoman Foxx, for bringing this in front of us, because I think that it is important that we empower women with information. Because if you have the more information, the more informed decision a woman can make in whatever situation they may be in. And so I appreciate having additional information for women. And I think I wish that the other side of the aisle would see that it is helpful to women for more information, and that's how they make an informed choice. But, and with that, I thank you for bringing it forward, and I look forward to voting for it on the floor.
Thank you, gentlelady. And now recognize my good friend from Colorado. Gentleman is recognized for any questions he might have for the panel.
I thank the chairman and want to thank Madam Chair and a ranking member for their testimony from being here today. I want to follow up on a point that my colleague referenced about, in particular, H.R. 6914, the Pregnant Students' Rights Act, and this notion that it's designed to simply provide more information. And so just to drill down a bit on this, Madam Chair, on page 5 of the bill, in section 2, it's titled Information Content, and I'll just read this. It's the information described in this paragraph is the following. Subparagraph A list of resources on campus and in the community that exist to help a pregnant student in carrying the baby to term and caring for the baby after birth. Do you see that language there?
It's
Subparagraph A. Page 5, subparagraph A.
Yeah, subparagraph A.
It starts with a list of resources?
Sure.
Okay. So a list of resources on campus and in the community that exist to help a pregnant student in carrying the baby to term and caring for the baby after birth. What are those resources that this bill is contemplating?
Well, it would depend on the community. It'd depend on what the community has to offer.
There are no universal resources, irrespective of what community you're in. I mean, I take this language to be that the federal, you're acquiring these institutions of higher education to promulgate resources, and you're saying that every school's booklet is going to be different?
No, we're saying that, that what exists, we're not requiring them to create any additional resources. We're just asking them to provide a list of the resources on campus and in the community. There's no requirement to create any resources.
So what would those resources be?
Well, there might be on campus facility, childcare facilities. There might be, there'll be probably in the community, childcare facilities. There might be information on food pantries, for example, if a student needed that kind of help. There might be information on pediatricians who are in the area.
Let me follow up on the food.
Anybody can think if you have a baby, what kind of resources do you need?
Sure. Well, so with respect to the food pantry, it's a good example. I went online. The American Pregnancy Association has a list of financial resources that are available to pregnant mothers to better inform them about the resources that might be available. The first item on their list is WIC, Women, Infants, and Children Supplemental Fund Program, right? You're familiar with WIC?
Yes.
Of course, right? The Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children. It's the #1 resource on this website that I went on. And my understanding is that House Republicans, 190 of them in this Congress, voted to rescind $500 million in WIC funding. You recall that vote back in September?
Not in particular the numbers or anything about the vote.
Well, I can represent to you that in September of last year, 190 House Republicans voted to rescind $500 million in WIC funding, and that included you as well. The next item on the list here is pregnancy Medicaid is listed as one of the financial resources. Of course, many House Republicans, most House Republicans oppose the expansion of Medicaid. I take it you do as well. Is that a fair assessment?
That's a fair assessment, but I have no idea what that has to do with this bill.
Well,
This is a very simple bill to help students. It's a very pro-student
Here's
bill.
what I'll suggest to you, Madam Chair. This is why it matters. The American Pregnancy Association lists as financial resources, one of those resources available to pregnant women is pregnancy Medicaid, so that they can access health care for them and for their child. House Republicans, including yourself, oppose expanding Medicaid for pregnant mothers in a variety of different states across the country. That's why it's relevant. And as you can see, where I'm struggling is understanding what information you are compelling these institutions of higher education to actually provide. To the extent that it's any of these resources, they're all resources that House Republicans seem intent on cutting. And those are just a few. I mean, the next one on here is temporary assistance for needy families, TANF. Again, a program that House Republicans have voted to decrease over the course of this Congress. So I guess what I'm getting at, and maybe you can help me understand this, is if the goal here is to provide, as the bill says, a list of resources to assist pregnant mothers, and if we know those resources, pregnancy Medicaid, TANF, WIC, a variety of others, are so critically important, why do House Republicans seem so intent on cutting them all? That's really my question.
Again, you're creating a straw dog here. This bill.
What was that?
This bill is pro-student. Surely, members on both sides of the aisle want to support women becoming mothers and college graduates. There are resources now. Whether or not we oppose some of those resources being funded by taxpayers at the federal level, is irrelevant to this discussion. They exist. Since they exist,
So the plan is,
then the students should know about them and take advantage of them. It's simple as that. You guys are throwing out straw dogs constantly about this bill.
Madam Chair, I would simply say, it seems to me the plan is to mandate the provision of a list of resources, of programs that Republicans are trying to dismantle in Washington. I don't really understand the utility in compelling the production of a list that says, hey, supplemental nutrition assistance program resources are available to you, unless Republicans have a majority in the Congress, in which case it's not worth much more than the piece of paper that this bill apparently is compelling the production of. But again, I guess what I would say, Madam Chair, and it's with all respect, I would be far more interested, I think, in debating and moving forward a bill that funds these resources, that funds these critical programs, TANF, WIC, SNAP, expanding Medicaid, to ensure that pregnant mothers have those resources, as opposed to passing a bill that mandates the creation of a list that lists them out. Ranking Member Scott, I know I want to give you an opportunity.
I'd like to respond
Sure,
to that.
of course.
We are the Education Committee. We're dealing with students. We're not the Appropriations Committee. That's Mr. Cole and other folks. So perhaps, since Mr. Cole's here, he can hear you say what you want funded. What should be funded is not in our purview, but these things already exist. And so we just want to make sure that students are aware of them. And we want the students to be taken care of. We want their babies to be taken care of. We want them to complete their college education. And so whatever exists, they should have access to it. And if they don't already know about it, we want the school to tell them. Very simple bill, very pro-student, not anti-anything. We're not here to speak against WIC or any of those things. That's a different subject. Thank you.
I hear you, Madam Chair, and I hope the appropriators hear us as well. I'm not on the Appropriations Committee, but the only caveat I suppose I would add is that you keep on referencing these programs existing. They exist for now. House Republicans have worked very hard to cut them to the bone over the last 14 months. So, the fact that you'd like to provide a list of resources around WIC or SNAP or TANF to pregnant mothers while the House Republican majority seeks to defund all of these programs just seems a bit disconnected, in my view, from the views and the values and the wishes of the American people. But Ranking Member Scott, I want to give you an opportunity to...
Thank you, and I think your comments highlight a real shortcoming of the legislation. It gives partial information to begin with. It doesn't give any information on contraception, resources if you experience a miscarriage, if you're going to choose to terminate the pregnancy for any reason. Just gives you partial information. And then in terms of resources, it doesn't give you anything. So that's, if you are trying to make an informed decision, you can't make an informed decision if you're only hearing one side. I would also say to the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, when you talked about the allegations, we did ask for a documentation for the findings, and the sponsor of one of the major parts of that finding was unable to provide documentation.
I thank the Ranking Member, I thank the Chair, and I yield the balance of my time.
Thank you. Gentlelady from New Mexico is recognized for any questions she might have for the panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Chairwoman, both today and at the hearing, there is a statement that this is about providing information to pregnant women to make sure that they can make informed decisions. As my colleague from Pennsylvania pointed out, the findings of this bill tell you what it is about. This is a bill to attack the ability of college women to make informed decisions and to make decisions about whether or not they want to have an abortion and whether or not, if they choose to carry the pregnancies, how to do it, and how to do it in a way that makes it healthy for themselves and for their children, especially because we know that college mothers have a hard time, that they go hungry more often than their counterparts who aren't mothers, who don't carry children to term. And so we need to give them the kind of resources that they deserve. But it's really, once again, extreme Republicans just want to keep women in the dark. That's what this bill tells me, because they don't really want to know what's available to them. In committee markup, Representative Jayapal submitted an amendment to provide pregnant students with information about the kinds of essential programs we're talking about so that their babies can stay healthy, like Medicaid, like SNAP, like women, infant, and children. So this would have been an amendment which, if we care about providing women with information, would have been, I would have thought, supported by Republicans. Chairwoman Foxx, tell me, how many Republicans voted for Representative Jayapal's amendment?
Oh, I don't believe any did.
So there were 0 Republicans who cared about providing pregnant college women with information they need to keep their babies healthy, to keep themselves healthy while they're pregnant.
I'm sorry.
They voted against that. Every single one voted against that amendment. There was another amendment. Representative Stevens submitted an amendment to make sure that pregnant students would have information about miscarriages, because we know that 10 to 20% of pregnancies result in miscarriages. She had an impassioned speech about the importance of making sure that pregnant college women knew about this so that they could save their own lives if necessary. Because we keep reading about the stories of women who are pregnant in states like Texas and across this country who cannot get the care they need because of the draconian laws. And so miscarriages are becoming a source of potential death for women. So how many Republicans voted for Representative Stevens' amendment, Chairwoman?
My memory is none.
Not a single one. So this isn't about making sure that women have information, because if it were to have full information, they'd have full information, and Republicans have said no. And these provisions aren't just smart, they're good public health policy decisions. We should be about, in Congress, saying, what is good for public health? How do we do that? How do we make sure that women have full access to information? I want to keep Congress out of the doctor's office when women are making decisions. I want to keep Congress out of the doctor's office, whether you're a woman in rural America, in urban America, suburban America, or on a college campus, because women deserve to be making these decisions with full information, with conversations with their own faith, their own doctrine, their own loved ones, and we should not be dictating that they follow what's in this bill. And for that, I would urge my colleagues to vote against this. I don't know if you want to add anything, Ranking Member?
I think you've said it very well.
Okay, thank you. With that, I yield back.
May I speak on that, Mr.
Gentlelady is
Chairman?
recognized.
This bill, contrary to my colleague saying keeps women in the dark, does everything we can to help students, female students who find themselves pregnant and who want to carry their baby to term. This is not at all about any of the issues that our colleagues are talking about. What we assume is all of the things that are all the resources will be listed. We did not see a need to try to list certain resources that are available. We want the schools to assume what to list. This is a very pro-student bill. It says absolutely nothing about abortion. It's totally mischaracterized by our colleagues on the other side of the aisle. We assume, again, that everybody wants pregnant women, pregnant students, to have the best information that they can to be successful and to carry their babies successfully. It's impossible to understand the characterization of this piece of legislation. I yield back.
Thank you very much. The gentleman from Texas was asked recognition to make a
Yeah,
comment.
just, Mr. Chairman, if I could, for a point of clarification, Medicaid created in 1965 a shared federal-state program had within it several populations that were going to be covered: blind, age disabled, feeble elderly, pregnant women, and children under a certain income level. That was the original, I refer to it oftentimes as the legacy population in Medicaid. When the Affordable Care Act passed, Medicaid was vastly expanded to include childless, non-working adults. The Supreme Court said states can't be coerced into expanding Medicaid, so some states did, some states did not. But in states that did not, you still have coverage as a pregnant individual, a pregnant woman, because that was the original compact. In the state of Texas, it's 57% federal share, 43% state share. That is the law that had existed prior to the Affordable Care Act. And whether or not, irrespective of Medicaid expansion, that coverage is available to pregnant women. What I do need to add is, in the past couple of years, the Committee on Energy and Commerce has done a lot of work on this in an effort to deal with problems that occur after childbirth. It was decided that a longer period of coverage after delivery should be available to states, and so a state plan option was made available and passed into law that states can extend coverage to a full year after delivery, which I think is a good idea. But it was not an expansion of Medicaid. It was taking care of the original population in the way it was supposed to be taken care of. And I just wanted to make that clarification, Mr. Chairman, because sometimes these things get conflated, and I'll yield back.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman?
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. And the chairwoman noted that this bill said nothing about abortion. I would just point out for the record that on page 3, line 11, there is a reference to abortion. On line 12, there is a reference to abortion. On line 20, there is a reference to abortion. On line 4, on page 4, line 1, there's a reference to abortion. On page 4, line 4, there's a reference to abortion. On page 4, line 10, there is a reference to abortion. This bill is very much about abortion. And with that, I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I want to thank both of our witnesses for their testimony today. And gentlelady and gentlemen are excused.
Thank you.